Welcome into this segment of Behind the Pen presented by MostValuablePodcast.com. If you want to listen to the full podcast, go to blogtalkradio.com/MostValuablePodcast. Also, we're on iTunes, so check us out there as well. Thank you all for listening as always, and enjoy the show.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome in, my friends, to another episode of Behind the Pen. My name is Mike Rankin, and I will be your host for today's show. And I am back from my sabbatical. Are we going to call it? Are we calling it a sabbatical? Maybe a leave of absence, some sort. I was just gone. I was gone, guys. I haven't been able to produce a podcast for you in up over 2 weeks, and I just can't. That can't happen. That is unacceptable. And I'm going to make it up to you today by recording a full-length podcast with a plethora of topics, mainly Chicago sports-oriented, because if you know and have listened to Behind the Pen for this long, Chicago guy, specifically Cubs, Bulls, Bears, and even today, I throw the White Sox in there too. I got some White Sox guys. You guys get it. And today I'm going to talk Blackhawks hockey because what was that in the first round of the Eastern Conference playoff? Or Eastern Conference. That's the Bulls side. The Western Conference playoffs there in the NHL. Bad, right? Bad. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk Chicago Bulls basketball because they're in the playoffs and they're up 2-0 as I record this podcast over the Boston Celtics, the one-seeded Celtics, by the way. And of course, we have to talk Chicago Bears. It's been way too long since I've talked Chicago Bears. The draft is next week. The schedules were released. They have Mike Glennon. I am pumped. So we're talking Chicago Bears football, Chicago Bulls basketball, playoff basketball, NHL with Chicago Blackhawks, and then I'm going to throw in some Major League Baseball conversation in there because we're about 2.5 weeks through April, right? We are flying through at least the beginning half, the early half of the Major League Baseball season, so we're going to analyze some trends, we're going to talk about some storylines, and we're going to get into it because baseball's awesome. But before I talk about my first segment, which is on YouTube right now, if you guys checked it out, obviously you're expecting some Chicago Bulls talk. We'll get to that in one sec. Necessities. Patreon.com/MostValuablePodcast. Guys, if you can take the time to check out Patreon and see what we've been able to accomplish since we introduced the online website, I think we've taken strides to get better. And that's the goal, to entertain you more so than we already do. So if you want to check that out, patreon.com/MostValuablePodcast. If you want to listen to the full-length podcast, blogtalkradio.com/MostValuablePodcast. You can search Behind the Pen, The Fast Break, all these, the Onside Kick, all of what we have to offer is on Blog Talk Radio, also on iTunes, and I think Ricky talks about Stitcher, something like that. And what am I missing? YouTube. Guys, like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. You guys are awesome. We really appreciate you. But let's get into this Chicago Bulls basketball conversation because what is happening? I think maybe, some savvy Bulls fans out there who are listening are probably like, yeah, this makes sense, right? The Bulls are built more so to play in the playoffs than maybe that we've seen in the regular season. And I don't want to speak for you Bulls fans, but I want to maybe throw out the question, are you excited that they're in the playoffs as an 8 seed? And I know you're excited that they're winning, but that question, because it's a two-sided thing, right? It's very interesting where the Chicago Bulls franchise is laying right now, because right now I feel like the fans are sort of divided, right? Some people are really passionate about the Chicago Bulls and they want to see them do well, while others are sitting there like, this team is garbage, this front office sucks, I want to see a sense of direction, let me see young players, draft picks, all the nonsense. Meanwhile, they're making trades for Campaign, who's inactive all the time. They're letting Pau Gasol walk for nothing. It's just, obviously you could tell what side I'm on. I'm looking for this front office, one, to be gone, and two, for this franchise to have a sense of direction. But what we're dealing with now, and the point is, the Chicago Bulls are 2-0 in the Eastern Conference playoffs against the number 1 seeded Celtics as the 8th seed. And that is because players like Jimmy Butler, Robin Lopez, Dwayne Wade, of course, and Rajon Rondo, guys are stepping up. How about Bobby Portis in Game 1? How about that performance? You have guys spacing the floor. This offense looks good. Zipser's having a pretty solid influence on the outcome of the ball game. Fred Hoiberg is starting to create a sort of consistent thing of rotations. I mean, he's got obviously his mainstays. You're not going to mess with that flow. But you guys like Jerry Grant coming in, Michael Carter-Williams coming in, and having a short leash. If you're not going to produce in your first initial stretch there as you're getting put into a playoff game, you're going to take a seat and you're going to be lower on the depth chart. And for a while there, like I mentioned, Campaign inactive, but now he has to play. Not necessarily in terms of being on the roster and being active. He has to play because Rajon Rondo has broken his thumb. He's fractured his thumb. And it's just an unfortunate situation because Rajon Rondo has been so productive in this playoff so far. You guys know, you've been watching it. They call it what, playoff Rondo? He looks like the latter part of the Celtics 2000 championship run. That's the Rajon Rondo I'm seeing up on the court. He's active in the passing lanes on the defensive side. He's moving the ball very well in transition. Obviously, we know he's one of the better ball handlers in the league, distributors in the league. He's been killing it. 11.5 points per game. He's got 8.5 boards and 10 assists in 2 playoff contests. And now he's out. And that hurts a lot. If the Bulls were going to win this series, you would need the consistent production from someone at the point. Rajon Rondo can obviously run it at a high level, too, despite his age, despite his inconsistencies in terms of shooting percentage from the field and all of his flaws. He's slower on the defensive end. He is turning it up in the playoffs. And now that he's out, it hurts the Bulls big time because Fred Hoiberg has committed to Jerian Grant as the starting point guard moving forward. And let me make this clear. I'm not sure when this podcast will be out. They are currently up 2-0 in the series against the Celtics as I'm recording this. Game 3 is actually tonight as I record this podcast. So this is all in the earlier stages of the Eastern Conference playoffs. So this is where we stand right now, and this is what I see. Now, Bobby Portis, if I don't mind shifting the focus to Portis. Now, I mentioned, the young point guards. You're going to have to rely on them. Campaign's active again, but he might not play because he's bad. Michael Carter-Williams, very inconsistent, sort of like a Rondo-type player, but he was bad, especially in Game 2. That was not good. And right now it's Jerian Grant, the more offensive option at the point. So now you got to rely on guys like Jimmy Butler. And I'm going to get to Portis in 1 second. But with Jimmy Butler, obviously he has the ability to take over a series. He's proved that. And I'm not going to get into the conversation of where he ranks as a top player, but he's obviously a top player. I don't know what else he can do. But he can command this series. He's a game changer on both ends of the floor. Straight up. Can lock down your best player offensively, and he could also take the big shot when necessary. So far, through 2 games in the series, Jimmy Butler, 26 points. He's averaging 8.5 boards, 5.5 assists. The point is, he's scoring at will, shooting up over 43%, and you're going to have a guy like Jimmy, right? For a team in the NBA, it's very interesting in the way that the success is had in the NBA. Obviously, a free-flowing offense, you got to move the ball well. Obviously, three-point shooting has changed the game, right, in today's age. But we know that the Bulls can't shoot in terms of threes. We know that. When you have a game changer like Jimmy Butler, and when you have a playmaker in Dwayne Wade who can still be there for you, who has experience, who has exceptional skill level compared to the rest of the talent in the National Basketball Association, you are going to find success if things are clicking. The problem with the Bulls team this year is they haven't been clicking, consistently at least. Sometimes they look fantastic. Sometimes they play like a top 4 team in the East. Other times they look like a bottom 4 team in the East. Right now, they're looking like they deserve to be where they are right now, up 2-0 in the series against the Celtics. So I mentioned Bobby Portis, and I promise I will talk to you. So I mentioned Butler. I mentioned Rondo, Wade, their impact on the game. But they can't do it by themselves. They need the complementary guys around them. And there's Bobby Portis for you. And he's a very unconventional 4. He's a stretch 4. You guys want to call him a stretch 4. That's fine. He has really improved his catch and shooting ability on the floor as a power forward. And a guy who has length, who is not really one of the more built or bigger guys at the position. But with his skill level, he is supposed to be someone who flies up and down the court, plays long, up above the rim, doing well as a rim protector on the defensive end, and also being able to close out on shooters. He can do that. He's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the athleticism. It's just the inconsistencies with his game. What can he do? He's not really that strong in the post. Well, he'll shoot the ball every time he has it. I'm not really sure how effective his ball handling skills are, decision making, his passing ability, but we know he can score and he can go off and he can hit a 3 when he has to. And Bobby Portis stepped up big in Game 1. So you have guys like that. Nikola Mirotic. Now, he's not jumping off the page at you, and he's struggling mightily. Under 30% shooting in the playoffs this year, but he's going to have to step up. He's been the guy that Hoiberg has been relying on in the rotation all season long. So you have all of this. all these guys, and you put them all together, and then you have this. You have this product. Really, it's Jimmy's team, right? It's Wade, it's Jimmy, it's Rondo. That's the focus. Lopez makes you competitive, especially down low. Backup Cristiano Felicio, like a lot. I'm not going to rave about him because I could all day. Haven't seen a lot of Denzel Valentine in this series, rightfully so. Paul Zipser, guys, we're looking at the whole situation. Who do you have as a shooter? Mirotic? Bobby Portis? Bobby Portis shouldn't be your best three-point shooter. I don't know if he is, though. I don't think he is. I think, a side note, the highest field goal percentage behind the arc for a while, based on a specific number, like a minimum shot attempts, it was Rajon Rondo for a while. I mean, granted, he didn't shoot a lot of threes, but boy, anyway, yeah, there's not any, we know this. We know this as fans. You guys are smart. No three-point shooting on this team. But you put it all together, and you have competitiveness because of Butler, Wade, and Rondo. And now you lost Rondo. Now you have to play Jerry and Grant, but you still have a guy like Wade who, like we talked about, can make things happen. He is still exceptionally talented. Plus, he had all that rest. I know being hurt maybe doesn't constitute rest as a good thing, but, I mean, he had time to rest his body. And when you're sitting there like Wade, who's getting up there in age, and he was pretty much playing a consistent pace earlier this season before he hurt his elbow, things were looking really good. And right now, I think, he's playing with a lot of energy. He's still getting up and down the court. This team, I'm not necessarily surprised that they're playing this well in the playoffs. However, I still don't know if I feel confident enough to take them in a 7-game series against Boston. I feel like just they don't have enough. They're not consistent enough. They don't have the playmakers. Yeah, you can rely on Butler all you want. Absolute game-changing ability, good enough to dominate a series, which he has already to this point through 2 games. You can look to Dwayne Wade hitting the big shot when he needs to, but you have to get to that point in the first place. Are the Bulls good enough to hang with this high-powered Boston lineup? It'll be interesting. Interesting to see. I think this is a lot of fun, though, because you look at all the storylines going back to the Chicago Bulls season. How the hell is this all happening, right? You have Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade separating themselves in the locker room, calling out the younger players, right? And I'm sitting here at the beginning of the season knocking on the Rondo signing, and I'm not going to back up on that claim. I didn't like the Rondo signing to begin with. I still don't necessarily like the Rondo signing. However, I will eat some of my words because Rondo has absolutely proven that he can be a fantastic team player. He can be a fantastic floor manager. He can be a fantastic role model for younger players because guys like Butler and Wade aren't going to be. And guys, I sit behind a microphone. I run my mouth. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not a professional basketball player. I'm not one of the most talented athletes in the entire world. But I do know that what Butler and Wade did to the rest of the squad in the middle of the season was absolutely unheard of for a team where it's like, whoa, we just suck. We can't help that we suck. We're trying our best. It was just off-putting. I feel like the idea behind calling out the team at the time was good in theory, but the way they went out and did it, it was just an awful example of execution, especially when you have Butler, who really hasn't commanded a locker room and spoke out for the team much to that capacity, right, in his career. You have Dwayne Wade, obviously, who's been there before, but man, that was an ugly situation. Then you have early in the season, Rajon Rondo throwing the towel at the Bulls' assistant head coach. That was a problem. But then slowly but surely, I brought up my opinion on Rondo because I wanted to make this point. Rajon Rondo has totally flipped my opinion on him because he won me over during that whole debacle that was Wade and Butler calling out the rest of the team. Plus, Fred Hoiberg was benching him and not putting him in the rotation consistently. Sometimes he was the 3rd point guard on the roster. It didn't make any sense. You had the front office saying, play Rondo. I'm giving you Rondo, this facilitator. Play him. And then he's like, oh, never mind. Don't play him. Don't play him. He's not productive. He's making us look bad. He's running his mouth. But you know what I'm saying? Just where is the sense of direction? Where is the consistency? Where's the leadership? Where's the accountability? I didn't see any of that in the Bulls season this year. Regardless, Rondo steps up, puts that Instagram post out, defends his teammates, and I'm giving him all the credit in the world for that. He's been always there for his teammates this year, especially the younger players. They look up to him. He even traveled down to the D-League to watch Campaign play. Come on. Who does that? Rajon Rondo's there. Now, the value in Rondo right now, unfortunately, that his thumb is fractured, he's still going to be on the sidelines with his team, still going to be able to coach, he's going to be there for the guys, But man, that production that he was able to put forth, he looked so good. He was so good in the first 2 games of this series, and it's a damn shame that he has to be out. And I can't believe I'm saying this. A guy who really, really bagged on Rondo throughout this season as a host here on Behind the Pen. You guys can, I'm sure, have listened to it. If you're a follower, you're a fan, I appreciate you guys all so much. I love talking sports and Bulls with you. But man, this is a lot of fun. I got to tell you, because I'm a guy who I want to see the Bulls fail so it could send a message to the front office and finally make something happen, maybe get a change there. Gar Forman, I think, is the first that needs to go. And then you can make your decision on Hoiberg and Paxson later. But if there's going to be any sort of rebuild, which I doubt is going to happen now, because based on the success they've already had in the playoffs, Forman and the thinking of this front office is that their philosophy is working, which is obviously, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. But I'm a guy who I want to see grab a young, exciting, talented point guard in the lottery or something, make a trade for more picks, and I want to see them take a sense of direction, and I want to see the Bulls acquire players. You're going to make a trade, acquire decent players, just players that I can say that I can look forward to watching. They have a future within the organization. I don't know. I can't tell. Campaign? Are you serious? I haven't seen Joffrey Laverne, right? I mean, anyway. Going into, to end this Bulls conversation, going into this series, really going into the playoffs, I wanted them to miss. Just so 2 years in a row, obviously not making the playoffs would send a message saying, well, what you're doing is not right. But now that they made the playoffs, the fan in me can't help but root for them. I'm rooting for the Bulls to win. I don't think they're going to win. But I might eat my words again, just like I did it with Rondo. But we're sitting here right now. I want to see the Bulls fail. I want to see a message to be sent to the front office, and I want to see change. If they're going to go under a rebuild, the Chicago Bulls decide to build from the ground up, I don't want to see Gar Paxson leading the way, because that's not going to be good. Gar Forman, John Paxson, I don't want to see that. They're just going to be in basketball hell, not purgatory, because right now we're in basketball purgatory. Now we're going to be basketball hell for years. So what are they going to do, guys? What are they going to do now? Boston's getting a good look at Jimmy Butler. You think they're going to trade for him? That would be the first overall pick. I wouldn't do it if I was the Celtics. I'd take that pick all day, every day. Well, we assume it's going to be the first pick. So what do you guys think? Where are the Bulls going to go from here? Are they going to win this series? If they go up 3-0, and this podcast is posted when they're up 3-0 already because the game's tonight, then, oh boy, wait, well, look at me. The Bulls could advance to the second round. And you know what else? If they make it to the second round, who's next? Is that Washington? So they're going to take Washington. That's going to be a very interesting series. I think the Wizards are good enough to possibly play in the finals, make a run at LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals. But if the Bulls get past the Wizards, and we assume that Cleveland gets to the Eastern Conference Finals, that matchup would be insanely fun, right? Butler, Wade, LeBron. I can see it. So I'm rooting for the Bulls. At this point, just go Bulls. Just go as far as you can. And I think they can make some noise. I don't know if I had the Celtics in 7 to start. I'm going to stick to that prediction, but I'm rooting. I'm rooting for the Bulls. Why? Well, I guess I can't help it. Thank you guys for sticking around for this segment of Behind the Pen. If you want more most valuable podcast content, click on the video up above, because I don't know why you wouldn't want to keep listening to our voices every day. But again, guys, thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate you.